The Pacific Theater, 1942 to 1945. The packed jungle undergrowth on the Pacific Islands created a battlefield unlike Europe, where fights often erupted at less than 30 yards. In that setting, the United States Marine Corps fielded a weapon that challenged many Japanese assumptions about modern war: the 12-gauge pump-action shotgun. The historical record of specific firefights is thin, yet Winchester Model 1897 and Model 1912 shotguns appeared with Marine units throughout the Pacific, adding a tactical option Japanese doctrine had not anticipated. For decades, the Imperial Japanese Army had prepared to face Western powers. Its manuals discussed British rifles, American machine guns, French mortars, and Soviet submachine guns. But shotguns, dismissed as bird-hunting tools rather than true military arms, never entered those playbooks. That omission mattered once American forces brought roughly 25,000 Model 97s and 60,000 to 80,000 Model 12s into service during World War II. In 1942, Japanese doctrine leaned heavily on spiritual motivation to overcome material inferiority. This was more than propaganda. It was a calculated response to industrial facts. Japan made less steel in a year than America produced in a month. The Imperial Army's answer was to make each soldier lethal at close range, where grit and training could outmatch machines. Tactically, that meant night infiltration followed by rifle and bayonet combat in tight quarters. Japanese infantry trained hard in these methods, effective against Chinese forces, against British troops in Malaya, and against American defenders in the Philippines. The standard sequence was clear: approach in darkness, slip through the line, then overwhelm defenders at hand-grip distances where Japanese skill in close combat would decide the fight. American shotguns upended that formula. At the very ranges where Japanese doctrine expected dominance, a Marine with a Winchester Model 97 could fire 6 loads of Lalo or Lazaro buck in about 2 seconds using the gun's slam fire. Each shell held 9.33 caliber pellets, throwing a pattern that made missing in tangled jungle growth unlikely. John Browning's Model 1897, refined across 45 years, served as the primary Marine shotgun in early Pacific operations. The military version carried a 20-inch barrel, a perforated heat shield, and a bayonet lug for the M1917 sword bayonet. Most critically, the Model 97 had no trigger disconnector, allowing continuous fire by holding the trigger while pumping. Winchester engineer T.C. Johnson's Model 1912 advanced Browning's idea with an internal hammer to reduce accidental discharge. By 1943, the Model 12 had largely replaced the 97 in Marine units, though both served through the war. Procurement files show steady output, even if exact frontline distribution is unclear. Ammunition mattered as much as the guns. Standard 00 buck loads carried 9 pellets, each roughly 53.8 grains and 8.30 mm across. At 10 yards, the pattern opened to about 10 inches. At 20 yards, around 20 inches. At 30 yards, near 30 inches. In jungle fights where sight lines rarely exceeded 30 yards, that spreading pattern offset the difficulty of precise aiming through brush. The Guadalcanal campaign, August 1942 to February 1943, was the first major U.S. offensive in the Pacific. Marines of the 1st Division landed with mixed arms, including some shotguns, though official reports don't list exact numbers or distribution. On August 24, 1942, at the Tenaru, really Alligator Creek, Colonel Kionao Ichiki's 917-man detachment was virtually destroyed. with 789 Japanese killed. The action looms large in Pacific histories, but primary accounts credit the losses mostly to Browning M1917 water-cooled machine guns and 37mm guns firing canister, with only brief mentions of shotguns. Across Guadalcanal, Marines use shotguns chiefly for perimeter defense and jungle patrols. Photos show point men carrying Winchester trench guns on patrol, positioned to smash ambushes at close range. Yet after-action reports overwhelmingly highlight machine guns, rifles, and artillery as the decisive weapons. Guadalcanal's climate punished all weapons, especially shotguns. Paper-hulled shells absorb moisture, swelled, and refuse to chamber. That problem dogged the Pacific campaign until brass-cased shells appeared. Humidity on the islands created a critical ammunition issue. Commercial paper hulls soaked up moisture. In 100% humidity, they swelled. Cartridges that slipped in when dry became impossible to load after exposure. Marines reported shells swelling so badly they had to be hammered into chambers. Impossible in combat. This crisis persisted until March 29, 1945, when the all-brass M19 shell shotgun brass 12-gauge number 00 Buck M19 was officially adopted. The moisture-proof brass brought reliability back, but only for the war's final months. That late change explains why many Pacific veterans rarely mention shotguns. For most of the war, ammunition issues crippled them. The U.S. military formalized training in Technical Manual TM 9285, issued September 21, 1942. It covered Winchester 97 and 12, Remington Model 11, Stevens 520, 620, and Ithaca 37. Marine training took place at Camp Pendleton in California, Camp Lejeune in North Carolina, and Parris Island, South Carolina. Instruction emphasized patrol point security, rapid night defense, cave and bunker clearing, and prisoner guard tasks. Marines learned the Model 97 slam fire, but instructors cautioned against overusing it because it burned ammunition and overheated barrels. The Marine Corps Table of Organization E-100, effective 1943, authorized 306 shotguns per Marine division. These went primarily to military police companies, pioneer battalions, and selected rifle squads for specialized duties. That allocation meant shotguns were present in every major Marine operation, but still represented under 2% of a division's small arms. The historical record shows a striking absence. Japan never filed formal diplomatic protests over American shotguns, in contrast to Germany's September 1918 claim that trench guns violated the Hague Convention. German protests in World War I said shotguns caused unnecessary suffering and threatened to execute captured Americans carrying them. Japanese wartime and post-war documents show no parallel concerns and no special countermeasures. Training materials focused on countering overall American firepower, machine guns, artillery, flamethrowers, without singling out shotguns. This silence implies that while Japanese soldiers certainly met shotgun fire, the weapons lacked enough battlefield weight to prompt official attention. Post-war interrogations of Japanese officers tell the same story. They discussed American material superiority, overwhelming firepower, and effective combined arms, but not shotguns. Flamethrowers, by contrast, did trigger detailed counter-tactics. The New Guinea Campaign, 1942-1945, saw both Army and Marine units in some of the war's nastiest terrain. The 32nd and 41st Infantry Divisions requested shotguns, encouraged by Marine experience on Guadalcanal. Visibility often shrank to single-digit yards, seemingly perfect for buckshot. But the same ammunition problems bit harder in the New Guinea highlands. Constant rain, river crossings, and punishing humidity made paper hulls nearly useless. Units that had asked for shotguns often left them in rear areas and relied on M1 Garands, Thompson submachine guns, and Browning automatic rifles. The guns looked ideal on paper. Combat exposed the flaws brass cases wouldn't cure until 1945. As the Pacific War progressed, Marines carved out specific shotgun roles. The weapons proved most valuable in three niches: point security on patrol, night perimeter defense, and prisoner guard work. On patrols, designated scouts carried shotguns up front to smash ambushes instantly and buy time for the squad to deploy. Buckshot spread could suppress several firing points at once, helping the patrol maintain fire superiority while unfolding. But it demanded training and trust, because the shotgunner operated ahead of support. Night perimeter defense was another specialty. Marines placed shotgunners at likely infiltration lanes, where spread compensated for poor visibility. The unmistakable pump action sound served as both warning and psychological deterrent. Still, limited magazine capacity meant shotgunners needed rifle support immediately once a fight started. The October 1944 return to the Philippines saw 6th Army request substantial shotgun stocks for Manila's urban fight. Marine ground involvement was minimal, mostly artillery and air. The Army's 37th Infantry Division used shotguns in house-to-house battles, though reports emphasize flamethrowers and demolition charges as the main tools against strong points. Urban combat revealed strengths and limits. Shotguns were devastating in room entries, but defenders quickly learned to barricade spaces and prevent close approach, neutralizing the advantage. Thus, the guns proved best in sudden encounters rather than in deliberate assaults. The February 1945 invasion of Iwo Jima theoretically fielded 918 authorized shotguns across 3 Marine divisions. In practice, volcanic ash, tunnels, and heavy fortifications offered little for them. The famous flag raising on Mount Suribachi came after flamethrower and demolition teams cleared positions, not through shotgun assaults. Marines on Iwo relied on flamethrowers to purge caves with specialized flame tanks in support. Of the 26,000 American casualties on Iwo Jima, records attribute none to the lack of shotgun firepower or failed shotgun tactics. Brass M19 shells arrived too late to matter there. Some units got them only in late March 1945 after the battle. Marines at Iwo still fought swollen paper shells, further limiting shotgun use during one of the war's most brutal fights. The April-June 1945 Battle of Okinawa implemented hard-won lessons from the campaign. The 1st and 6th Marine Divisions theoretically held 612 authorized shotguns, now with reliable brass ammunition. Yet the battle unfolded mostly in open terrain against layered defenses, leaving few chances for shotguns to shine. The Japanese 13th Army avoided banzai charges, dug into the Shuri line, and fought from bunkers and caves that kept ranges longer. Marine units leaned on coordinated tank infantry tactics, with flamethrower tanks providing close support. Where shotguns did appear was in the final reduction of positions as squads cleared remaining defenders from captured works, and in MP duties with massive civilian flows. Important roles, but a modest slice of the overall fight. Despite the vast World War II record, specific descriptions of shotgun fighting are surprisingly scarce. The Library of Congress Veterans History Project holds thousands of Pacific War interviews, yet only a handful note shotgun combat. The National Museum of the Pacific War has more than 4,000 oral histories, but detailed shotgun accounts are almost absent. Eugene Sledge's With the Old Breed, one of the most respected Marine memoirs from Peleliu and Okinawa, never mentions them. Robert Leckey's Helmet for My Pillow, drawn from 1st Marine Division service on Guadalcanal, likewise says little about shotguns. These omissions in thorough, well-regarded narratives suggest the guns sat at the margins of Marine combat experience. Where references do appear, veterans call shotguns useful in particular situations. Not as primary battle winners, they praise them for night posts and jungle ambushes, but emphasize rifles, machine guns, and mortars as the arms that truly determined outcomes, matching records that show shotguns under 2% of divisional small arms. American factories produced substantial numbers of military shotguns in World War II. Winchester turned out about 25,000 Model 97s and 60,000 to 80,000 Model 12s for contracts, with further thousands from Remington, Stevens, and Ithaca. That output demonstrated industrial power, yet it did not guarantee frontline use. Many shotguns ended up at training ranges with guard details or in rear area security rather than in assault units. Military police needed them for handling prisoners and convoy protection. Navy ships carried them for boarding and security. Airfields used them on perimeter posts. These necessary but non-frontline duties absorbed a large share of production. The gap between manufacturing totals and combat mentions shows that while the United States could have equipped every squad, practical limits, ammunition troubles, tactical factors, and doctrine kept most shotguns in supporting roles. They remained specialized tools, not standard battle rifles. Comparisons with other weapons make the point clearer. The M2 flamethrower, introduced in 1943, appears in virtually every account of cave and bunker reduction. On Iwo Jima alone, Marines burned through roughly 27,000 gallons of fuel, with detailed records of effects. In contrast, shotgun ammunition expenditure rarely shows up in the paperwork. The Browning automatic rifle served as the Marine squad's base of fire and generated an extensive body of training and tactical notes. By 1944, every rifle squad had 3 bar teams. Shotguns, though authorized, never reached that level of doctrinal integration or documentation. Even the relatively uncommon Browning heavy machine guns drew more concrete battlefield reporting than shotguns. Veterans can tell you where the Brownings were emplaced, how much ammunition they chewed through, and how they turned a fight. Such specifics are largely missing for trench guns. The divide between shotgun legend and historical record mirrors broader World War II myth-making. Films and sensational accounts often inflate a weapon's role. The shotgun, dramatic, brutal up close, naturally drew that attention. Post-war movies showed Marines blasting through Japanese positions with trench guns, anchoring a public image that primary sources do not fully support. Video games and popular histories carried the image forward, turning the shotgun into a Pacific icon despite thin documentation of widespread combat use. This mythology serves narrative needs, intimate, high-stakes clashes, and stark tech contrasts. Yet careful history must acknowledge that rifles, machine guns, mortars, and flamethrowers decided battles. Shotguns were present and sometimes decisive in their niche, but not central. Where veterans do recall using them, they laud their utility, yet note the drawbacks: weight, limited capacity, and narrow employment. A Marine interviewed in 1985 remembered carrying a Model 97 on Guadalcanal, great for night watch and narrow jungle paths, but no good beyond short range. When the shooting started, you wanted a rifle. That practical judgment reflects the weapon's limits across varied conditions. Shotguns excelled within their niche, but could not stand in as general-purpose arms. Another veteran from 2nd Marine Division explained the issue pattern. Each squad was supposed to have one, yet half the time it stayed with the company gear, too specialized for everyday operations. That illustrates the gap between authorization and reality. Units possessed shotguns, but rifles proved more adaptable for routine fights. The brass-cased M19 rounds adopted in March 1945 theoretically solved the moisture issue that had plagued the guns across the Pacific, but the fix arrived too late to alter the campaign. By then, Iwo Jima had been secured, Okinawa was already underway, and the Philippines largely settled. The new shells were useful for occupation duty and the planned invasion of Japan, where urban fighting was expected. Planners for Operation Downfall requested large shotgun stocks for city fighting, but the atomic bombings ended the war, leaving the brass ammo's combat benefits mostly untested. Post-war analyses often suggest brass rounds would have significantly improved performance had they arrived earlier, but speculation cannot revise the record. The absence of Japanese shotgun countermeasures offers another clue. Japanese forces devised detailed responses to weapons that truly mattered: overhead cover against mortars, spider holes to foil tanks, reverse slope defenses against naval gunfire. Nothing similar appears for shotguns. Japanese adaptation focused on terrain and layered defenses to blunt American firepower in general. They shifted from beach stands to inland fortresses, built interconnected tunnels, and abandoned mass banzai attacks. All answers to combined arms, not to any single small arm like the shotgun. Post-war Japanese studies analyze U.S. artillery coordination, naval support, and tank infantry cooperation at length, but barely mention shotguns. When a thorough review ignores a weapon, it suggests minimal battlefield impact. Statistics, or their absence, tell the same story. World War II generated mountains of data: ammunition tallies, casualty correlations, weapon effectiveness studies. Yet no reliable figures tie shotguns to specific enemy losses or tactical outcomes. Operational research units measured artillery and mortar effects, and even small arms hit rates and ammunition efficiency. Comparable shotgun studies are missing from the archives, implying too little meaningful combat use to analyze. Veterans can estimate rifle rounds fired, grenades thrown, or mortar shells launched. They rarely cite shotgun counts. This statistical void points to a peripheral role despite authorization and production. Training at Marine camps raised expectations that frontline reality did not fulfill. Marines learned slam fire techniques, ran jungle ranges, and qualified with buckshot and slugs, implying a larger combat role to come. But the battlefield was not the range. Guadalcanal's humidity and Iwo's ash upended theory. Training targets did not shoot back or force engagements at standoff distances. The point-blank clashes imagined in training were less common than expected in real operations. The pattern echoed elsewhere: exhaustive bayonet drills despite little bayonet fighting, gas training despite no gas attacks. Logistics further narrowed shotgun use. A 12-gauge shell weighed roughly twice a rifle cartridge and took up 3 times the space. In the volume and weight of 36 shotgun rounds, a Marine could carry about 80 rifle cartridges. Ships, beaches, and trucks prioritized rifle, machine gun, and mortar ammunition over specialty loads. With limited cargo capacity, every case had to be justified. Shotgun shells, suited to narrow rolls, ranked lower than general-purpose ammo. Even where units had shotguns, ammunition allotments were often thin. Veterans recall receiving 1 or 2 boxes meant to last entire operations, a constraint that discouraged aggressive employment and further reduced real-world impact below theoretical potential. Urban combat looked ideal on paper, prompting calls for more shotguns before Manila and Naha. Tight rooms, short ranges, and clearing tasks seemed tailor-made. In practice, Japanese defenses set up kill zones that blocked close approach. Barricades, interlocking fields of fire, and booby traps kept American troops beyond effective shotgun range. When close-in fights did happen, veterans say they leaned on grenades, Thompson submachine guns, and flamethrowers. These offered similar shock up close, but with better sustaining power. A Thompson's 30-round magazine far outlasted a 6-round tube in prolonged engagements. Even though Japan paid little attention to shotguns and doctrine, American culture granted the weapon outsized symbolism. The figure of a Marine advancing with a trench gun became iconic, even without strong archival support. The shotgun fit a national self-image, practical, willing to press a hunting tool into combat regardless of European conventions, a compelling narrative, even if frontline reality was less dramatic. Japanese military culture, centered on rifles, machine guns, and artillery, never folded shotguns into its warfighting concepts. That supposed blind spot mattered little in practice because shotgun use remained limited. The broader lesson is about technology and doctrine. A tool can perform perfectly yet mean little if conditions and systems do not align. Shotguns were devastating at contact distance and their spread-suited brush, but the fights that truly decided battles did not consistently occur on those terms. Marine doctrine evolved across the Pacific, yet shotguns never became core squad firepower. Experience, not design flaws, kept them in supporting roles. By contrast, the Bayar became the squad centerpiece with detailed doctrine, and flamethrowers transformed bunker reduction, driving deep tactical development. Shotguns, despite promise, never sparked comparable evolution. Administrative records provide another angle. Requisitions, repair logs, and replacement requests trace usage patterns. Rifle and machine gun parts dominate supply lists. Clear signs of heavy combat wear. Requests for shotgun parts are sparse, suggesting less firing wear. Division armorer reports show rifles and MGs needing constant attention. Shotguns mostly needed corrosion cleaned from storage, rather than parts replaced from hard use. Ammunition orders tell the same tale. Divisions asked for millions of rifle rounds and hundreds of thousands of machine gun belts, while shotgun orders stayed modest and often aimed at training rather than operations. These administrative footprints support the limited combat employment suggested by veteran testimony. Other nations' experiences help frame the American case. British and Australian forces fought jungle campaigns in the Pacific with minimal shotgun use, relying instead on rifles and submachine guns. Their success without trench guns implies such weapons were not essential to victory. Soviet forces, despite immense small arms output and terrain ranging from Stalingrad streets to Kursk's fields, never standardized combat shotguns. Chinese armies fought close-quarter battles throughout their war with Japan without adopting them widely. This international picture suggests shotguns were one tactical option among many, not a prerequisite for battlefield success. Post-war evaluations weighed World War II weapons for future conflicts. Infantry boards gave priority to rifles, machine guns, mortars, and recoilless rifles. Shotguns drew relatively little interest, evidence that wartime performance did not justify major investment. Korea saw limited shotgun use despite frequent close encounters. Marines on patrol preferred M1 Garands, BARs, and carbines. That choice by combat veterans of the Pacific War speaks to the weapon's real versus theoretical utility. Vietnam brought shotguns back, often commercial models adapted for jungle patrols, but even there, they remained specialized tools for point men and tunnel rats rather than standard issue. The same is true today. Shotguns fill specific roles. The historical record supports several conclusions about Japanese encounters with American shotguns. First, while Marines carried them throughout the Pacific Campaign, actual combat use was limited by ammunition issues, tactical realities, and doctrine. The March 1945 brass ammo adoption came too late to change outcomes. Second, Japanese forces developed no specific countermeasures because shotguns never hit hard enough to require them. Wartime documents, training materials, and post-war studies show no special focus. Third, the gap between authorized numbers and documented combat use underscores the difference between capability on paper and practical utility. Marine divisions were authorized 306 shotguns apiece, yet many remained on guard posts in training or in rear security rather than in assault squads. When veterans mention them, it is as situational tools, not primary weapons. Fourth, the cultural aura surrounding trench guns in the Pacific exceeds their measured combat impact. Popular media elevated them without strong primary source backing. That myth can obscure the simpler truth. Rifles, machine guns, mortars, and flamethrowers won the battles, while shotguns filled narrow niches. The broader lesson is that technology must mesh with doctrine, logistics, and training to matter. Shotguns had clear strengths, but could not overcome the practical limits that constrained their use. Japan's failure to anticipate them had little consequence because the weapons never reached decisive scale. Japanese attention rightly fell on the arms that truly shaped outcomes: artillery, naval gunfire, aircraft, and flamethrowers. American capacity to build thousands of shotguns showcased manufacturing prowess, but production did not equal combat power. The ability to make weapons outstripped the ability to employ them effectively in Pacific conditions. That disconnect between output and employment shows industry alone does not create tactical advantage. Ultimately, the story of Japanese infantry facing American shotguns says more about how military legends grow than about combat itself. Shotguns were present and sometimes effective, but they never produced the sweeping battlefield effects often claimed. Japanese soldiers were indeed surprised to meet 12-gauge trench guns, yet that surprise rarely changed the result. The verifiable record, production figures, manuals, and organizational tables confirms their presence. The missing pieces, detailed combat narratives, statistics, and Japanese countermeasures, point to limited real use. Veterans who carried them describe specialized tools helpful in specific moments, not battle changers. Brass shells finally fixed the moisture problem, but too late to influence the major island battles. By then, the war was being decided by island-hopping campaigns powered by combined arms, overwhelming firepower, and naval dominance, not by close-range buckshot exchanges. Japan's lack of a shotgun-specific response reflected sound tactical judgment rather than a critical oversight. They focused on countering the weapons that actually beat them: artillery, naval guns, aircraft, and flamethrowers. Shotguns, despite their theoretical edge up close, never reached the scale to demand dedicated counters. Modern militaries still use shotguns for specialized tasks: breaching doors, employing less lethal rounds, and tight, close-quarters roles. That limited modern use mirrors their true World War II employment more accurately than the legends do. The way modest historical facts grew into a large cultural image shows how war stories evolved beyond their sources. The image of Marines clearing positions with trench guns fits narratives of American pragmatism, adaptability, and raw firepower. Yet a careful reading of primary sources, veteran testimony, and records yields a plainer truth. Shotguns were authorized, present, and occasionally devastating, but they never rose to the tactical importance their popular image suggests. Japanese infantry may not have expected 12-gauge blasts in the jungle, but battles were decided by American logistics, industry, and combined arms, not by a handful of buckshot. Seen clearly, the shotgun story is not about an unexpected wonder weapon reshaping the Pacific War. It is about how capability, employment, and memory interact, and how legend can overshadow the quieter historical record.